walking around, and I don't like standing, but I'll try. So a few things before I begin. One thing is, everything you just said, take 50% off, and give that to my wife. I mean, I'm serious, because you don't wake up one day and say, you know what, let's just throw my career out of the window, let's just make my life miserable, and you'll just accept it. This was an entire, like from the beginning, an entire conversation with my wife. She keeps me grounded, and she also she fights back sometimes. And so that's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is, people always ask me, like, can we quote you? Can we film you? And I say, yes, of course. When you speak the truth, you don't hide behind keffiyehs and masks and sunglasses. And I think it's extremely important to say. So the only ask that I have is, if you do take something out of this and you feel like, okay, this is important, this is interesting, share it with someone who's not in the room. Share it with someone who's not Jewish. Share it with someone who doesn't understand. And then the third thing I'd say before I begin, which is so important for me, like every time we start anything, to remember the hostages, that we still have 132 hostages that we need to bring home. So, yeah. So, I never write speeches, which is good or bad. When the first time when someone says, oh, I heard your speech, and I was like, what speech? I've never given a speech. And I was like, oh, you mean when I talked and people listen? Okay, that's a speech. But today I wrote a few things for myself, so I might be looking down, which is weird for me, but I just want to remember. We are living through, many of us, of a certain age, are living through the most difficult times of our lives. And I think just acknowledging that, just sitting with that for a second is so extremely important, because this last Passover was the most important Passover I've ever celebrated. And the past Yom HaShoah was the most important Yom HaShoah I've ever commemorated. And next week, for Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, Memorial Day and Independence Day, will be the most important I've personally experienced in my 41 years. And the reason why it's such a difficult time has nothing to do with politics. And it has nothing to do with ideology. And it has nothing to do with differences of opinion. The reason why we are experiencing this, the most difficult times of our lives, is hate. It's just hate. It's hate that masquerades itself as politics. It's hate that masquerades itself as some social justice, but it's hate. And that's why it's so difficult. But at the same time, when you realize that it's hate, it makes it easier to deal with it, because we know how to deal with it. So like I mentioned, this week was Yom HaShoah. We're heading towards Yom HaZikaron. It's an entire week that is just focused on remembering, right? Especially if you follow Israeli news, like it seems like for an entire week the news stops, the world stops, and all we talk about is what happened in the Holocaust, and all we talk about is the fallen soldiers, and we spend that week to remember. Now, we remember partially to respect the fallen, to respect the victims. But we also remember because we have no other choice. We don't have a privilege to forget. We remember, think about it, we remember every Passover, we remember Egypt. And every Purim, we remember Persia. And we remember the Spanish Inquisition, and we remember Germany, and we remember Poland, and we remember Iraq, and we remember Yemen and Morocco and the Soviet Union. And unfortunately, and this is painful for me to say, but we will remember the US. We will remember Columbia University. We will remember because we don't have the luxury to forget. And the interesting thing about how we remember, and this is what sets us apart from anyone else, from them, those that want to destroy us, is we don't remember as victims. We remember as survivors. I told this yesterday in a conversation. I said, I have never in my life met a victim of the Holocaust, because they're all dead. But I've met many, many survivors of the Holocaust. And last week, when I went to the Nova exhibit in downtown, which I think should be a must for everyone, Jew or non-Jew, there were people walking around and telling their stories from the festival. They weren't victims of the festival, they were survivors of the festival. And this is an important thing, because when you remember as a victim, you lose all agency. You have no idea what to do next, like you've been victimized. But when you remember as a survivor, you get a blueprint. And that is why we remember. We remember because it's not a history book for us, it's a how-to. We remember, we read the Haggadah on Passover to be like, okay, so, you can wait for a higher deity to come and save you, but there's also some stuff that you can do your own and, pack up and leave when you need to. And we learn about the Holocaust, not just to commemorate as like, here's what happened, but also here's how we make sure that it never happens again. That to me is why we remember. And that's, by the way, why I'm a professor. I'm a professor that's trying to understand, as a psychologist, to understand the human mind, not out of some, armchair luxury of like, this is interesting, which it is, but also because as a professor, I want to figure out a plan forward. How do we take the lessons and make sure that we all do better? So what do our blueprints of history, what do they tell us? What do they teach us? Well, they teach us there's always going to be those that are evil. There are always going to be those that will want and attempt and sometimes succeed to eliminate some of us. It teaches us how to identify them. Our blueprints also teach us about the indifferent. They teach us about those that maybe it was too painful for them to see us being persecuted, but instead of doing something, they looked the other way. And that's an important lesson because we're seeing the exact same thing happening today. Some of my colleagues at Columbia, many of my colleagues at Columbia, many of your colleagues, whether you're in law or in the corporate world, many of your student fellows, are good people. They are good people. But we're good people that are looking the other way. And we know where that leads us. And unfortunately, our history books also teach us that at any point in time, there have been those amongst us that have betrayed our people. And we have to deal with them as well. And we need to fight them, oppose them, but also be there for them when they are the ones persecuted, because it never ends with the quote-unquote bad Jews like us. Also the good, the perfect Jews, they also come for them. But I think the most important thing that we learn is it doesn't have to be this way. We can fight back. We can fight back. We don't have the numbers. but we have the brains, and we have the passion, and we have no other choice. So we fight back. And what does that mean? For me, fighting back has been putting myself out there, shouting, expressing what I believe, burning every bridge. And honestly, I'm not worried about burning bridges because I never wanted to be on the other side anyway. But that's not the only way to fight back. Fighting back is just showing up. Sometimes just showing up to a rally is fighting back. Fighting back sometimes is just existing as a Jew. When I went up to SUNY Purchase, so I met Esti on a flight to a Stand With Us conference. We were sitting next to each other. And she was like, oh, now I have to speak with this guy for an entire 6-hour flight to to LA. And I was like, yes, I get to speak with someone for a second. But, and I said, like, look, if you, I'll come to SUNY Purchase. If Hillel puts the bill for the train, I'll just come. And I didn't know what to expect, and I show up. I come from Columbia, and Columbia has, about 1,500 Jewish undergrads, many, many more graduate students, faculty, community, and I show up, and we're in this small, cozy basement. There's like 9 of us, or 10 of us. Then I find out one of them is Esti's dad. But then I realized sometimes our fighting back is just being Jewish in a place where they don't want Jews to be. And that, to me, was an immense understanding, that we all fight back in our different ways. And the important thing is that we fight back. And this is why I am so extremely excited about the young generation. And I know some people look at me and say, like, well, you're the young generation. It's like, I wish, I hope. But, the high schoolers, the college students that are standing up, that are taking a stand, that are showing up, you give me hope. You really give me hope in a time where there's not enough reasons for hope. But then I see someone like Tviel. I see Tessa Wexler at Santa Barbara. I see the amazing Columbia Jewish students that wrote this incredible letter that if you haven't read yet, you should go and read. It's called In Our Name. And they give me a lot of hope. So what do? We don't just sit back and say, okay, the young people are going to figure this out for us. No. We have an important role right now. We have a role to support them emotionally, because they are going through much more than all of us post our schooling years are ever going. So we need to support them mentally. We need to support them financially, to give them the resources that they need to fight their fight, our fight, and to give them the voice, the platform. We need to amplify their voices because they have incredible voices. And all we need to do is be their shofar. They have more knowledge than I and many of us around the room will ever have. And we just need to help them get that knowledge, that voice out there. And in that regard, Stand With Us has been incredible. I am ashamed to say, and I got into trouble when I told Rose this in the annual conference, I didn't know about Stand With Us before October 7th. And that's on me. That's not on anyone here. That is on me. We no longer have the privilege of not knowing. So I am so immensely thankful for Stand With Us, for the work that they do. I'm so immensely thankful for all the students, the high schoolers, the college students. And I just want you to know, I'm in this fight with you until the end, and the end is going to be positive. I've never been introduced with a Menachem Begin quote, I have to say. My grandfather might be rolling in his grave, but he also might be smiling. And we will fight, and we will stand tall, and we will not die. This is not our first rodeo, but I want to make sure it's the last one. That once we beat this, our kids and our grandkids we'll never have to deal with this again. So thank you so much.